It's been 2 weeks since the election and all of the dust has settled, or enough of the dust has settled where we can get a clear picture of what actually happened. At the time of making this video, there's only 4 seats still in doubt, and both the Liberals and the Greens have elected their new leaders. I watched the election happen live on Discord with the community and it was really fun. I liked seeing Labour win. But over these past 2 weeks, watching everything unfold, I'm not really sure how I feel anymore. And I'm hoping by the end of this video, you can help me figure it out.
I don't want to mention pre-poll because people are actually now drinking every time I say pre-poll.
One thing is clear, this election was a bloodbath, leaving Australia red. If you were a die-hard Labour supporter, this was Christmas on crack, and if you were a Greens or Liberal supporter, you were begging for us to share that crack with you just so you could make it through the night. By 8:30, only 30 minutes after the Western Australia polls had closed, Anthony Green told us he could not see a way forward for the coalition, and by 9:30, Peter Dutton not only conceded the election, he'd also conceded his seat. His concession speech was beautiful. I wonder what would have happened if he had spoken as he spoke that night throughout the campaign. Maybe this says more about me, but I felt like I saw him as a human for the first time in a long time, not this political android with the talking points programmed into him. I'll be honest, it was a weird feeling to see the Liberals collapse in front of my eyes, pushed out of Tasmania entirely. The Liberals had been struggling with their identity for a very long time. And after the loss of not just their leader, but a lot of their front bench, it's going to be even harder for them to figure out that identity. They didn't have a strong identity going into the election, but somehow it even got murkier. It's clear that Dutton and Price taking on this Trumpian diatribe about wokeness in schools and the future of Australia didn't just not help them, it actually harmed them. I don't know why they brought in a Trump campaign manager. Anyone who watched the Canadian election knew Trump skilled into this toxic passive AoE that politically destroys anyone who touches him with a 10,000 kilometer pole. That's not to say we can thank Trump for Dutton losing. We can thank Dutton for Dutton losing. As much as Price wants us to think she's deadly serious about Albanese throwing mud, Dutton was consistently throwing mud at Albanese and then begging Australians to ignore the fact that his hands and policy documents were consistently stained brown. Dutton's policies felt like they were made for everyone and no one at the same time. The nuclear fantasy was nothing but a fantasy. It was unreliable, unattainable, and people did not trust Dutton to take the step towards nuclear, even if they thought nuclear was the best option. It was going to blow out the budget, and by the time they were up and running, we couldn't even guarantee there wouldn't be better solutions. Liberal seats were and are supportive of solar much more than they were supportive of nuclear. This wasn't a policy that even his own base naturally wanted, and it felt as though we all somehow just moved past the fact that it's not even legal in this country and would have required major bills to pass through Parliament, which he might not have even been able to do. I can't believe the super for housing policy even got announced. This policy was going to drive house prices up, rob people of their retirement, and sounds like something a teenager would say when they get their first paycheck and instantly turn libertarian the moment taxes come out of their wage. The fuel excise was a temporary bribe that on average wouldn't have saved us $14 like he promised. There was barely any mention of female-centered healthcare, what he was going to do about domestic violence, and Dutton saw himself as the Listen Al Gaib who could convince Trump to remove the tariffs, despite the fact no other country has been able to do so, and we later found out Trump didn't even know who he was. Our Pacific neighbors hate Dutton because he didn't take climate change seriously, and he publicly said Russia was looking to access an airbase in Indonesia, which just did not happen. He went on his tirade against Coles and Woolies and couldn't even correctly say how much eggs cost. How are you going to go on about price gouging when you don't even know what the prices are being gouged to? Susan Ley is the new leader of the Liberal Party, winning the vote 29-25, beating out Angus Taylor. I think that was the right decision. The Liberals have a problem connecting with women, and there is no better way to do that than put a woman as the leader of your party. I know every man and his dog has learnt the phrase glass cliff overnight, but I really am hopeful. There is a chance that the Liberal Party actually find a way to fix their image here with Susan Ley at the front of the party. I am surprised Taylor didn't win. My sports bet ticket is definitely surprised Taylor didn't win. But I think it was better to put a woman at the forefront than another older white man who was not going to be able to connect with the voters that the Liberals desperately need. I'm curious to see what the Liberal Party looks like over the next couple of years. I'm not sure they know who they want to become, but I'm hoping they turn more towards the Teals than they do the more extreme conservative political parties. I don't like the Liberals' policies, but I'm hoping hoping one day they wheel out some policies that at least get me interested. I think opposition serves an important role in the political system, and I don't like that they are just disappearing in front of my eyes. And I guess speaking of disappearing, we should probably talk about the Greens.
Thanks for coming out. I've got a few remarks that I'd like to make and won't be taking any questions at the end of it.
This was a bad night for progressives. I love to cope as much as the next guy, but I think I could learn a thing or two from Greens voters as the votes came in. Here's the reality. The Greens have an image problem, and it's time we go back to the drawing board. This wasn't a win. It's not right to say that it was. I understand that the Liberals getting slaughtered impacted how preference votes flowed, but let's look at first preferences then. Max Chandler Mathers, the housing spokesperson, a 3.2% loss in first preferences. Brisbane, Stephen Bates, a 1.4% loss in first preferences. Adam Bandt, the leader of the Greens, the representative for Melbourne, a 4.8% loss in first preferences. Now, to be fair, in Adam's case, there was redistricting, but that's not the whole story. One claim from Greens defenders is it's not the Greens' fault because people didn't know how preferential voting works. They thought that to keep Dutton out, they had to put Labor as number one, so they moved away from the Greens for that reason alone. Now, that probably did contribute to the Greens losing seats, but that's also not an excuse. Part of an effective campaign is educating voters, and in this case, the Greens missed the mark. And that isn't necessarily me saying the Greens did a poor job at educating voters. I don't think they did do a bad job of educating voters. I think as much as people want to critique Abby Chatfield, she actually did a very good job at getting young women, especially politically interested, and understanding how the system works. And the Greens used that as a tool, and it was an effective tool. But when people also say, well, no, the only reason the Greens lost is because of X, Y, and Z, that's the Greens' fault. An effective political party should be able to overcome challenges. And if they couldn't do that, if they couldn't overcome the educational difficulties on how the political system works, then they have to go back to the drawing board and get over that hump. Nationally, the Greens were only down about 0.2% for the federal vote. The Greens had 12 Senate seats in 2022, now they have 11. Some argue that because the Greens still held 11 seats in the Senate and their federal vote stayed roughly the same, that that's an achievement. And I don't necessarily disagree. Weathering the storm is infinitely better than sinking the ship. But let's take a step back again. Let's say after all of this, the votes are slightly up and everything else is roughly the same. But you've lost Max Chandler Mathers, Stephen Bates, and Adam Bandt, the faces of the party. Can we really say that that's a victory? Are we really going to hold on to this bigger number, better party? From a purely morale perspective, that's a pretty rough hit Greens supporters have to take. I'm not even a die-hard Greens supporter, but I was really sad Adam Bandt lost his seat. I've critiqued the Greens a lot, but for all of their faults, whether it's about Max Chandler Mathers or Adam Bandt, these men seem like they are committed to making Australia better, even if I don't fully agree with how they do it. They are passionate, they are honest and care about what they're saying, and especially in the case of Adam Bandt, I like that a man like that was in Parliament. But he is gone now. We no longer have a voice remotely similar to Adam Bandt's in Parliament. He was a good leader of the party, despite some of the mistakes he made, in my opinion. And it's sad that he is gone. Overnight, the faces of the party, the leadership, bang, gone, out of Parliament. That isn't a win. In no universe is that a win. We can't do the Australian equivalent of, oh, here's how Bernie can still win, and it was the political elites who pushed Adam Bandt out. Mistakes were made during this election, and nothing is going to improve for the party if we don't accept that reality. You weathered the storm and made it to shore, but the captain and his first mates didn't, and we don't really have a strong direction of where to go now. The reality is that people began viewing the Greens as obstructionists. Labor would say 10, Greens would say 12, and then they would dig their heels in. And Labor either gave in, gave up, or found another way to get the policy through. And the Greens did get some electoral victories this go-around. But I'm not sure those victories were big enough to offset the fact that people believe the Greens were these obstructionist bill blockers. Sometimes how you do something is more important than what you actually do. And the Greens did do some good things. But it wasn't enough to fix their image. All people saw were the Greens denying the good in pursuit of what they believe to be the perfect or even the better. This is a funny and ridiculous tweet, but I think there is something that does need to be said about how older Australians view the Greens and how younger Australians are now viewing the Greens because they blocked the half. That as much as it's ridiculous to blame the past on why the Greens lost now, I think they do have this image stained onto the party and they really need to fix it. The Greens are slightly growing, but they're really struggling to pick up voters who weren't already in their orbit. Everyone else is going to Labor, and to Labor they went. Larissa Waters is the new leader of the Greens, and I'm really hopeful that she can take a look at the good parts of the party and keep them, and take the parts of the party that need some work and fix them. Because I really think the Greens have a lot of potential, and I'm really sad with how they performed this election, despite me being a Labor supporter. And I guess speaking of being a Labor supporter, I'm not sure how I feel about them winning.
We return to the work of building Australia's future.
What a night for Labor. There isn't much to be said that hasn't already been said. The Australian people resoundingly said that we want Anthony Albanese over Peter Dutton. But it's important not to conflate that with the idea that people wanted Anthony Albanese wholesale. The policies were strong and Albanese personable and trustworthy. He seemed like a reasonable, intelligent man, and in my opinion, he was a bit boring. But when we have such global and economic insecurity, I think the Australian people wanted boring. You don't want a character, you want someone who telegraphs their moves and colours between the lines. And that's not to say that I don't want ambition. I think his Medicare policies are ambitious, and I think we need a leader who is ambitious to fix the housing and economic problems Australia is facing. But he doesn't come off as irrational or impulsive. And I think that was a really, really good thing we needed from a leader right now. There wasn't any Albanese policies that made me go, whoa. But there also wasn't really anything that made me go, whoa. His speech was nothing short of amazing. It hit the right points, expressed warmth to those who didn't vote for him, and reinforced the clear passion he has for Indigenous reconciliation and for Medicare. He defended Dutton when people attacked him in the crowd, and he came off as a leader. The Albanese government now has this rare opportunity to do amazing things, have some ambition, take some small risks. There are big changes that need to happen in this country, and they have a strong lower house and a pretty decent upper house. They can make big change, and I hope they do, because even though the Australian people voted them in now, there is an appetite for change, and if Albanese doesn't do things effectively like I think he can get voted out in the next election, just as quickly as he got voted in. Big swings can happen within the span of one election cycle, and I hope that he can keep the swing heading towards Labor. It was a landslide victory, and a well-deserved one at that. But at the same time, I wasn't sure if I was going to put Labor or the Greens as my number one until I stepped into that election booth. I don't know if Anthony Albanese can fix the issues Australia is facing. These are issues being faced in Canada, the United States, England, Japan, and none of their leaders have seemed to figure out how to solve this issue. I don't know if Albanese can do that. I trust him more than I trusted any other leader, but I'm left with this weird feeling of being resigned to the fact I'm not sure something is actually going to change. When people ask me who I'm voting for, I say the same thing. It feels like ever since I could vote, Australia has kind of been out at sea with the ship sinking. And I have these two leaders who tell me that they have the best life raft to get us to shore. But it doesn't feel like anyone really has a plan for if we make it to shore. And we never do make it to shore. We're still out at the water, and we're a bit closer, but then I have to decide whether I stay in the life raft I've got, or I listen to the guy who's trying to tell me that his life raft is more comfortable. When are we actually going to have a leader who gets us to shore, who makes those big changes and makes us feel like we're in a really good spot? Because Albanese and his government have done some amazing things. The Labor Party as a whole have done some amazing things when it comes to HECS and when it comes to Medicare. There are so many things in my life that I'm thankful for that come back to the Labor Party. But why don't I trust them to make the big changes we need? Why don't I feel that material difference in the quality of life? Why am I still seeing my friends struggle so much to buy a home with no real plan of how to fix the issues? What's really being done to fix the domestic violence issues this country is facing at its core? There are some great policies that help people get into the housing market, but at the end of the day, they really only cause the cost of housing to continue to go up. It's a step in the right direction, but it doesn't fix the issues at their core. And I really want a leader who doesn't feel like they're just throwing flex tape on the issue over and over again. And I'm empathetic to the fact that progress takes time. I'm not a revolutionary by any means. I like that Anthony Albanese is a reformist because I am too, despite the fact that some people strongly believe that is not going to work. He's only been in government for one term. I'm not expecting him to fix these issues overnight, but I'm also not really hearing anything that's going to fix these issues in a couple of terms' time. I really do wonder what it would have been like if we had a Greens-Labour coalition. I think it would have been interesting to see, as much as the Greens do have issues when it comes to that obstructionist mindset. But at the same time, they're a minor party. When all you have is a hammer, everything does start looking like a nail. I'm disappointed with how much the anti-immigration rhetoric came into play this election. I like the fact that people were standing up for the Palestinian cause, but I think the way they went about it had some issues for public perception. It's not about tone policing, it's about picking your battles, and I'm not always sure the battles that were picked were the right ones to take. I think Albanese played his cards right when it came to managing the US and Donald Trump, and overall, I think he's going to be good for our neighbours and good for Australia on the international stage. I'm disappointed with how he handled the voice to Parliament. I think it was a failure, and I think part of that does come down to Labor. At the same time, though, Dutton and Price were throwing mud all over the place. I think I'm happy that Labor won, or maybe I would have just been sadder if they lost. I'm really not sure what I'm feeling. My political opinions have changed dramatically over the course of this election cycle. I'm not sure where I fit anymore, but I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm young, and I'm always willing to change my opinion if someone presents better information or a better perspective. But hey, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you're feeling. Come join the Discord, come talk about it, come say hi, like and subscribe. It's been real.